Okay, Baruch Hashem, the Olam got here. Obviously, you weren't coming from overseas, and because of the particular schedule, so the Shailos was sent in about 5 minutes ago, besides the ones that I still had left over. So I looked them over briefly. They're all good. Some of them we won't get to, and we saved them. Some of them are not, they're so good, might not be fit for a video recording. So we'll have to decide that, which means the Shul could ask me afterwards or try to push till we get it in next time. The first two of them are actually nagea to what we're going to talk about in the hashkafa part at the end, so we'll save that for then. And we'll begin with something that is very nagea now, and I gave a shir in it just about a month or two ago. Somebody's writing it up, and I'm supposed to look over what he wrote, and it's going to appear, I think, somewhere in a Kami Chayenu publication or something like that. So we'll give the short version. And that is as follows: Can AI paskin Shailos? So Bochurim shouldn't be on AI. It shouldn't be on computers if they don't have to. And adults shouldn't be overusing it either. With that said, the very brief answer, which really doesn't need a whole lot of commentary, is that in order to paskin a shaila, you need a few basic things. You have to be a yid, which presupposes you're human. That's first thing. And then you have to be learning Yom V'Layla for many decades. And you have to be a person who understands the matzav and understands that you can have the same shaila asked 20 times, and sometimes it's basic and it's the same answer, and often it depends on the matzav, and there's l'chatchila, b'di'evet, shas adchak, and the matzav itself creates a different din even when it's not b'di'evet, where it would have been also in a different situation, or a mitzvah in a different situation. That's quite a gap. So in order to figure all that out, you have to be a human, you have to be a yid, you have to be from, you have to be working on your Shemayim, and you have to have a lot of yediyas and be learning all the time. And obviously, AI, no matter how good they might get later, right now, in preparation about a year ago when it first came out, and I'm sure it got better, but a few guys in the Shul asked me, can I just take a look? I said, maybe 2 in.m. we'll have a chance if you want to show me a dugma. And it must have gotten better because this was so ridiculous. So I said, just ask it, tell me something about Ramesha. That should be easy enough, no? And I couldn't believe it. I was amazed. I never knew that our Moshe was related to the Bein and the Vilna Gaon and everybody in between. And gave me a whole long zettel on Medic Zereshav, a Rabbi. I guess he was related to every Gaon. I mean, there's hallucinations and hallucinations. That one was quite pelodic. So he said, yeah, it got better since then. Maybe yeah, maybe not. But for paskin Shailos, any slight detail can change, which is why AI, despite its upcoming brilliance, can't do it, because you need emotion and you need to know the matzav, and all it's doing is Googling something, doing it quicker and trying to add some of the artificial intelligence to analyze. And it's a very dangerous thing. The better it gets, the more dangerous it is, because when it completely hallucinates, then you know this is like not a matzav. The better it gets, the Olam might start thinking that this is really good, and if it's 99% good, it's more dangerous, not less dangerous, because the Siyat D'Shmaya is only promised in the Masechta Hariyas that even if a mistake is made, but if it was done and it was clearly a mistake, then they undo it. But the assumption, the Siyat D'Shmaya and a Psak, is based on the fact that you're human, a Yid, have Yireh Shamayim, and have a right to paskin, and then you have the Siyat D'Shmaya, and the computer obviously doesn't have any of that. And that's very basic, so that sort of cuts through all the noise about how good it is, and it's hallucinating, not getting better. It's irrelevant. It's never going to be a yid, never going to be human, and never going to have the emotion to be able to deal with it. So that is very important to keep in mind. And the follow-up question was, is it wrong to use it for schoolwork? The Goyim are struggling with this because nobody wants to do any work b'chlal, and if you're supposed to be writing papers, I don't know, the person sent in the Shailos 10 minutes ago, obviously is in Yeshiva, it's one of you. So I don't know how many papers they're asking you to write, but it's pretty clear that for the amount of English we're learning and for the amount of writing you're trying to get a handle on, they want you to actually know how to do it. And it's a Shailos of Gnevas Das. If the rules are you can do whatever you want, then they shouldn't be sending Bochurim to computers. If your parents aren't there anyway and they're using AI and you ask them, can you write a paper or just put this in and spit it out, and my teacher's fine with it, then maybe you should replace the teacher. But if that's okay with them, it's not Gnevas Das. Obviously, it's not going to be okay, and it shouldn't be okay. And no one's ever going to get anything done. The Hashkafas HaChaim that we should just create more and more gadgets to be able to do less and less and think less and less. And the damage that has caused and that they themselves realize is causing is Lo Human Ki Super, how many categories it's touching and what it's going to do. And no one was working that hard in the first place, and now everybody wants to do less and less. That's the purpose of it. Just sit on a couch and don't move, and we'll do all the doing, thinking, computing for you. So this is not a shayla on how much English you should be doing in yeshivas. The shayla of whatever small amount you're doing, you should probably learn something. And even the Goyim admit this is a bad way to learn it. So I don't know whoever sent in the shayla can volunteer, but is it wrong to use it for schoolwork? If the teacher didn't say, maybe it didn't say yeshiva because then Hazmanim, no one's going to be using a computer or AI. But if it's obvious that it's going to be Gnevas Das and they want you to do work, whatever small amount of work that's being done, as Davar Pasha, that's going to be Gnevas Das. So somebody asked me this a few weeks ago, and I told him this, and he said, yeah, if it's not Gnevas Das, everybody knows everybody's cheating. That was never a good svara when they were cheating on various things, and it's still not a good svara now. And if you think it's a good svara, so why don't you ask the teacher, is this an umdun demuchoch and dvarim shabalibo v'leiv kaladum, like Taisa says, that it's really mutter even though you don't like it? If they say sure, then okay, then it's not Gnevas Das. If they don't, then we're back to the Gnevas Das, and it's Gnevas Das. Not good for you if you're already spending some time doing it. So the follow-up on that was, well, I don't want to be spending time doing it, and I think it's a waste of time. I said, okay, so you have to talk to your parents and the manal about. But if you're already doing it, you can't present something that doesn't exist. Next, is it true that you can listen to a lady singing through a recording? The short answer is no. The longer answer is he said he thought he heard, Vajja has a tshuva on it, you can argue, which he does in the tshuva, he wouldn't advise it, that it's you don't know what she looks like, and it's not it's a recording, and it's not the actual voice, and it's not what they answered, and if it's an Issa D'Rabbanan, Lamaisa, nobody is going to say that's good for your ruchniyas, even if it's mutter, and it's quite clear that it's going to be a machlokes and what Chazal were trying to guard us from. And when I say it might be the Rabbanon, they quote a pasuk, if it's not smachta, it's not chumish, it's a hedge against tirhurim. And whether you actually see the person, if you know what she looks like and you see her, then it's going to be worse. And if you don't, you probably will find out sooner or later. And then Lamafreya, it's going to be also anyway, even according to the Mekilim. It's a little hard to understand. It's a gzeira, it's a low plug, but if you want to argue not so, it's not good for your ruchnius. And the few times that people ask this, I try to drill down, figure out, like, what do you want to listen to? And what? So a couple of them made up a story, because they got it from AI, about, no, it's just my sister, and it's just, she needs self-confidence, she just wants her brother's haskama. Okay, a sister is a din, but that's not so bad. But I had a feeling that's not what it was about. And if you get into an area like this, then you're probably listening to things you shouldn't be listening to, and even if it all happens to be a Yiddish Tom, if it's based on the fact that you don't know what she looks like, you're not going to find out. So, it's in Hilchos Lashon Hara, people think there's a heter. If I don't know who the guy is, it's mutter. It's very hard to figure out. You don't know who the guy is. How much do you have to know about him? His name, his social security number. How do you figure out what's Yediyah? And even if you figure that out and you don't know the guy Bechlal, and it's just you didn't hear a name or you heard Chaim Yankel, and what happens when you meet him in a month from now or a year from now? Then L'mafreya, old Lashon Hara you heard is going to be Asa. That's a little dangerous. And it's really not clear what the gather is in the first place of Yediyah of a person. It's quite clear you don't have to know him well. And I've heard this in those who are looking for heterim to listen to general raid that involves Lashon Hara, because you don't really know the people well. It's Lashon Hara is l'chol adeis adin deraisa many times over, many lavim, and it's not a good idea to look for coolers in these things. Over here, there's certainly deraisa d'rabbanan achshash here, and even if there's really no picture in the mind at the moment, and you don't know who it is, you don't think you're going to find out, even according to the Tzad L'Hakol, it's a very risky proposition, so halach l'maisa, it should not be done. I said that I'm meichel everyone in Tefillah Zakah. This is only a couple of weeks ago. It's an excellent Shaila. We touched upon this once, a couple of years, where Baruch Hashem, the fellow was saying Kriyash Malamita, and the paragraph before, Rani Meichel, L'chol Misha, all the avlas they were doing. And the Shaila then, if you remember, presented was, what if I'm not really Meichel? Should I say that paragraph anyway? It's a good question, and the answer is you should say it, because, first of all, saying it according to some Peskim, whether you're Meichel or not, really is Dvarim Shabalev and Dvarim, and the Mechil is Chal, which is good. Good for you, good for him. Chutz from anybody owes you money, we'll get to in a moment. That we say in Tefillah Zakah. People remember the parentheses there. Owes you money, you have a right to collect. L'maisa, Tefillah Zakah talks about Mechila more because it's Yom Naram. We've all been working on that, but we do say it every night. So like the Shitas that hold that it's Chal, then it's a taiva for you and for him. The Shitas that hold it's not a Shaila of Genevas Das if you're working on it. If you tell him beferish, somebody asks you, are you really Meichel me, and it's not true, that's a Shaila of Genevas Das. But here you're saying a general nusach. So, the follow-up question on that is, what is with the money? So I'd just like to put out the following. This is very nageh to Bochurim, but it's nageh to adults as well. On a different level, but it's all the same yesod. And that is, if somebody owes you money, you have a right to get your money. And Rashi says clearly, based on Chazal, a din Torah that's a shavar pruta is just as valuable as a din Torah that's shavar $1 million, and you have a right to be taveya. With that said, nobody does that. No one's going to a din Torah for an amount of money that takes more time to get it, and it's going to cost them more money. And you have a right to ask a shayla, and if he owes you a quarter, owes you $1, owes you $5, you have a right to ask for it. With that said, and that's, you can't erase that, and don't forget that in the following few paragraphs we're going to mention. And that is, I've seen personally situations where they were arguing about, still not sure what they were arguing about, but somebody had an issue, and of course when I pointed it out, he said, no, it's not the money, it's a small amount of money. I asked him why he's like creating World War III over this amount of money. And of course, he says, not the money, it's the principle. Of course, always the principle, it's never the money. So even if that's true, it didn't make sense for the amount of money. A recent thing, if the amount of money, it just didn't, both parties were comfortable. And so you say, well, why not? He owes the money. You have the right to. That's not the discussion over here. The discussion is in life, there's X amount of hours in the day, and you got to learn. And you also have to not get into fights and not get Vav Lashon Hara and Sinna, and it's very hard to be Meichel afterwards. And he kept hiding, it says in Tefillah Zakah, except for anybody who owes me money. I said, I know that. You're asking me advice, what you should do. You didn't ask me a shayla, you have a right to be tavei shavar puta. Of course you do. So, what's the advice? The answer is, life is short, hopefully 150 years plus. There's only X amount of money around that you're going to be using, and it's going to make a difference in your life. And the $1 you'll own somebody in yeshiva, and the $5 and the $10. And in this case, it was working people, so it was $100, $500. He has a right to bet $500 money. $100 is money, and Shavuot Put is money. To start a machlokes like that, that's going to go on and on and on. I said, just to have rachmanis on your learning, his learning, just the amount of lashon hara is going to be spoken. So it was a real discussion. They said, well, doesn't it say you are allowed to mon and the Bein has to take seriously shavar puta kemeya? The answer is yeah, but you also have to look at the collateral damage of what's going on. I can't tell you how many times I've seen this. It's just not, and they always regret it afterwards, that wasn't worth it. That whole machlokes and all the lashon hara involved. It's not like you're going to stay clear of lashon hara that's not ta'elis. And it's going to be just get out of hand, and it's not going to end, and then you have to meichel for all the other things they said in anger. So, in life, you have to think about that, and there's no tzitkus in this maisa, but when I was a bacher, your age, you could still buy something for maybe a quarter or two or three or four, and people buying quarters, they're buying dollars. Besides the sugi of writing a star, which is a real din, the truth is written, why does anybody do it? You can write a little IOU with your ksav yad. There are those who taina as the truth of the Pri Yitzchak. He says it's only hiddur or chumrah. The Gemara says it, and most paskin, like in the Pri Yitzchak himself, knew that and was trying to write a truth of miyash. Many people weren't writing shtaris. It happens in yeshiva all the time. Come can borrow $5, $10, and nobody has a pen, nobody has a paper, and they're writing out chedushay Torah. But when it's in the hallway, nobody has paper. They should get a paper. They should write it out, because the starting position is, after a while, somebody wants his $5 or $10 back or $20 back or a quarter back. And he's a right to it. And go prove it. So I paid you back, I didn't pay you back. That's exactly why there's a takana. You got to write it down. And when you get it back, there's sugyas you spend hundreds of hours on. You're supposed to give back in the star, and he starts saying, one bracha told me, he says, I finally did the din, I had a star. I said, great. He says, what happened? He said, I presented it to him. So what happened? He said, it's mezuyif. I said, was that in first Seder or was that real? So, but he did the right thing. Okay, it's like the other guy's a clown, and he says it was his ksav yad. How did he say it was mezuyah? He said he has a pretty bad handwriting. Okay, so you have to make sure it's legible, but it's a real din. And after a while, I told him to let it go, and we're not here to make enemies, and it's not worth your time. Money is valuable, and we don't do bal tashchis, but again, the sin of the kindle lashon hara gets out of control. So, an eitzah, even though tefillah zacha, you said you meichel everybody except for the people who owe you money. If this comes up, just give it a thought or two. At what price are you going to get your quarter or dollar back? Often it's because you don't want the guy to get away with something, and you want your dollar, and every dollar counts, and again, you have a right to it. Is it worth your time? And is it worth, so they start quoting every Rashi. If a guy's giving a rough time, when I give him the eitzah, I said, the din is you can ask for whatever you want. I'm giving you an eitzah. So he said, I just have one kasha, I know the next thing's coming. No, he's going to quote Rashi and Chumash. In Sefer Bereshis, what is he going to quote? No? You didn't get there yet. It's not in Parshas Bereshis. He's going to start talking about Yaakov Avinu and Pachim Ketanim. And sure enough, he says, Pachim Ketanim, Mom went back in the middle of the night. So you have to learn what that Parsha over there. Yaakov Avinu is wealthy, and Taka wise a mutter to go back for Pachim Ketanim. And it was Yaakov Avinu. So I told him, when you get to the Madrega and all the other areas, we'll talk about it. And there was something very deep about those Pachim Ketanim. It doesn't make sense if Yaakov Avinu is a Gevir already, and he can make $1,000 an hour, and he's wasting 10 hours to get something worth $5, that Taka is losing money in the process and putting himself in danger. So obviously there's something going on. So the guy's staying on the phone with the phone company, and he spends 5 hours getting back the $7 error in his bill. It doesn't necessarily make sense. And usually the answer is, but I don't want them to get away with it. Now it's $7. Next time it's going to be $7 million. You can't let people get away with things. Okay. That's what you want to spend your time on. But getting into a fight with Verizon, at least it doesn't involve straight lashon hara and sin and kina and machlokes in the community. You got to think about it. And this does come up quite often. and especially the Bochurim who are borrowing on the fly, not writing it down, bisamich on the kula, which might not exist. And then afterwards, when they want the money back, they can't prove it, and then when they do, he says mezuyif, and then you get into a whole fight. The fellow who insists on taining mezuyif, and he's not joking, and it's not Purim, he doesn't have to be your best friend either. It doesn't sound like such an honest bacher, but that's so different than keeping a fight going on for a lot longer than it has to. So it's good to keep it in mind. And I told this bacher who asked me that I'm happy he really took Tefillah Zaka seriously, and that's why it's written very carefully, obviously. Next, this is, you can hear this happening in yeshiva possibly, but it's nogea throughout life. And what's interesting here is that there is a Chavetz Chaim in Be'er Ma'im Chaim, in Hilchos Lashon Hara, who declares this Shaila, and it's a very important Shaila, but it's nogea to other cases as well. When you have a heter ta'elis to do an Aveira, it's not an Aveira if it's ta'elis. Lashon Hara ta'elis is somebody calls you for a shidduch, and they need real information that is valuable, not things that aren't going to change anything. It's takanat ta'elis. So then you're mechuyev to say. So call it a mitzvah. Chavetz Chaim has a lot on this, and he says that if you do it, you have to do it really believe shalom in terms of focusing on the ta'elis, and you have to do it not because you don't like the guy anyway. You've been waiting to talk Lashon Hara for all these years, and now's your opportunity where you can talk Lashon Hara beheter. The Chavetz Chaim is not at all sure that it's mutter in that case. It's ta'elis? The answer is, it's ta'elis, but if you're doing it not l'shem shamayim, then maybe there's no heter for you. And the Shailos of the Rices, and the Chavetz Chaim is very concerned about this. I saw Aaron Leib ask in the Sefer in Chumash. I asked quite a few Bochurim if you remember from 7th, 8th grade, whenever you learned it, or you chazed it since then, there should be something beferish, all of Masechta Makkos about this. Do you remember I asked you the Shaila? Remember Makkos? How long ago did you learn Makkos? 3 years ago? 2 years ago? It's not beferish anywhere, to my knowledge, but he mentions it, and he says the Gal Adam has a heter to kill the Ratzei B'Shegeg. It's a pasuk in Chumash. It's machlekes in the Gemara, machlekes Tanaim, whether it's a mitzvah or a heter. It's a mitzvah. Remember, the tzad is a mitzvah over here. So why is there a heter? Maybe a mitzvah. Ki yicham levavo. Can't control himself. He's very angry at the guy. What happens if it's a neighbor? Probably happened around the corner. Rachmana litzlan. He never liked the guy anyway, and he has tainas on him besides this, and now he finally has a heter to kill him, not just talk Lashon Hara, which is also Vitzicha. So why does that say anywhere in the Masechta that when you have a heter, or according to Rabbi Kiva, it's a mitzvah, then you have to make sure first you don't have any other agenda, you have no tainas on him, you do it l'shem shamayim, that the pasuk says ki yicham levava, and it's a mitzvah here, or it's a heter, but you only have the heter because he killed B'Shegeg your karov, not because you had tainas on him from before. It's the same shayla as the Chavetz Chaim, just it's talking about b'tzicha, real b'tzicha. Lashon Hara is also b'tzicha, but it doesn't say anywhere. So then, according to Kiv, it's a mitzvah that you should have to go through this process to make sure you don't know the guy from before, and if you do, you don't have any tainas on him, and you're not enjoying it in any other way. So Aaron Leib wants to know, why is that? Or is that? Maybe it's the same rule. It should say that somewhere in the Masechta. The Pella. It doesn't just talk. There's not so much on the Gal Adon, the Machlekes, the Mitzvah Rishus. It's not an interesting Machlekes. It says you sent him Chum along to try to talk him out of it. That's the Mandamer, it's a Rishus, not a Mitzvah. If it's a Mitzvah, why would you talk him out of it? So, Naniach we paskin is a Rishus, but still, even a Rishus, you have to do it without prior tainas and Machlikesim and Sinna. And it doesn't say that beferish. So, what am I getting at? We'll take a machlekes the Taz and the Sma, and Hilchos Shmiras HaNefesh. We'll make it in a yeshiva context. You see a bacher getting bullied. Bullied could mean physically. It could mean they're leaving him out of things, and he's being mavuzah, and they're insulting him, and bullying can take many forms. In many grades, it doesn't always stop at 5th grade, 8th grade, 11th grade. It can happen with adults in various forms. So you notice this and you feel bad for the guy and you want to help him out. So first thing you try is give a little suggestion or mussar, which normally you have to try. Sometimes amir matzah, it works. You have to try and tell the bully, maybe leave him alone, and that he really feels bad, and you're being over on another devarim, or you're hitting him, and it's an issa deraisa. I'm like, what are you doing? Try that a couple of times. If it doesn't work, and often with bullies who have their own issues, it doesn't work. So now, what's your next step? So if you think back, I hope this wouldn't happen past 7th grade. But can happen even later. Boys will be boys. What happens if you have a bully? Most of the time it's in verbal abuse or other forms of anaz, devarim, or psychological terror. It could be physical also. Let's take the physical example. That's what the Taz talks about. Reuven it's in the dorm late at night, and he heard a shmooze. The bully that one of his Rabbi told him it's important to exercise. So he's going to decide he's going to exercise. So instead of exercising during Hakafis, which the Bochurim here did a very fine job of, even though you're a little Charlie horse, and they made sure I got exercise also. So besides that exercise, he decided he's going to practice his muscles and flex his muscles just on the other guy in the next bed. He starts like physically, and he doesn't plan on really hurting anybody, but he's beating him up. You never heard, I'm getting a lot of blank faces. You never heard, I guess, you never heard of this, seen this, never happened in Yeshiva. Baruch Hashem. Okay. I must have phased it out. No? What? Never heard of this thing. Mamish Kulam Kadeshim. The verbal, psychological, I know you heard of? Even by just the conscious omission, that means, for the AI paper you're supposed to write, that means just like leaving him out, but dafka because you want to show that this is your chaber and he doesn't belong. That happens. That's also bullying. So, the Taz's case is somebody is getting hurt. It's not necessarily a sakana, but he's pushing him around. So after a couple of warnings and a little mussar, which didn't work, unfortunately. So what's your option? I should say, what's your chiyuv? So Taz brings down that you have to stop him because you have a chitim mafreshim me'yisura. Best thing is to go tell Rashiva, the Manal, your Rabbi. Let's say, no, that worked. It's in the dorm, it's in the dira, it's late at night, and nobody around but you. And you are not afraid of this bully, you can handle it, and you're going to physically remove him from the machlekes and from the brawl, and maybe even from the dira. So, what's the din? So, the din is you have to do it, because besides saving the guy, you have to mafresh him from Yisura. Hitting somebody, even if he's not getting hurt, is an Issa already. You have to mafresh him from Yisura. The Taz brings the Sma, and the Sma says something to the effect that that's only if you don't have other tainas on, and the same thing like the Chavetz Chaim, or you're not just looking for a good fight or to get your own exercise, you're not looking for action, you have no other agenda, and you like the guy or don't know the guy, but you're not doing this for any other reasons, no nakama, and your mom is doing l'shem shamayim, then it's okay. And the Taz brings us down, and I'll read to you the lashon of the Taz here. Quite fascinating. Siman Tav Chaf Aleph. Kedei lafrisha me'isur hasma machale bein amroga b'kacha loy any idea tama zeh achilik kiven dedinu sheyachol lahatzah idea kol lamaisa if you have to use force to get him off of him ma li bezeh sheyesh lo sina al hamaka. What difference does it make if you had prior tainas? The Sma has an issue with it, which per the Chavetz Chaim is more understandable. You have to do it l'shma. And the Taz says the guy's getting beaten up. Well, you're going to start declaring whether you're doing it l'shma, 100% l'shma or not. You have to get him off of Shimon. That's the Taz's kasha. What's interesting is the Chavetz Chaim would say, yeah, it is totally in Kavana, and you have no right to do it. What's the difference? Somebody calls you for a business partner or a shidduch. If you don't say something, he's going to fall in. That's also a chiyuv, and the Chavetz Chaim is not sure whether you can volunteer the information unless you're doing it l'shma. So the Taz seems to hold it's a very nice thing to do and try to be matar your leiv, and if you don't or didn't or can't, you got to do the right thing and save him. So I had somebody who actually asked me the Shailos. He asked me the Shailos about 30 years after it happened. And the guy he removed from the premises I'm talking to the guy face to face. He came to see me. Good from Chashuv Ben Teira. And he said he thinks the guy that he removed from the dorm room has tainas on him, which he did. He said, am I responsible? I said, what happened? Why'd you hit him? He said, I didn't hit him. He's a big guy. I just, like, after a couple warnings, picked him up and threw him aside so he wouldn't do any more damage. So I started asking him, did you do it l'shma? He was telling me a Maisa from decades ago. He says, I did it to correct the problem and to save the other guy. It wasn't a constafosha, but he has no chiv to be getting beaten up. And the same thing would apply if he's getting insulted and somebody's screaming out and being vazin. So why does the guy have tainas? He says, why does the bully have tainas? The same reason he was a bully in the first place. But this is decades later. It was very interesting. He said, I'd be happy to apologize to him. Did I do something wrong? I said, you know what? Even if you didn't do something wrong, you could still apologize just to make shalom. But that's an idea. Just to get, which he ended up doing. Very nice guy, worked on his midas, and he says, he just wanted to know in the apology, like, does he have to do tshuva himself? So based on what you're telling me, it doesn't sound like you had a choice. But B'Zachadarm, he asked, well, what if I didn't do it 100% l'shma? I said, it sounds like you did. Why should you get involved otherwise? You had nothing personal against the guy. And even if you did, the Taz holds you have to get involved. Shailos with the Chafetz Chaim agree. And what's with the Gadol Adam? Keep in mind, though, that Chafetz Chaim does say it by Lashon Hara, might say it over here. L'chatchili, you certainly should be getting involved if somebody needs help. You shouldn't be getting involved if somebody better to do it who could do it more l'shma. And this does come up. I've witnessed, because after they're fighting for a while, usually they come for a hachra in various areas, and I've witnessed things go on by the time it gets to me for a long time. And if it's the $1 or $5, I try to tell them what the din is, and I tell them, you just drop the whole thing. It's not worth your time, but if they want to pursue it, they can pursue it. Over here, you have to figure out who the best person to give the musar is. Nobody likes to get involved, and the one time he got involved, they actually helped the other bacher, and that's a mitzvah. You try to do it l'shma. Maybe the Chafetz Chaim holds you have to be sure you're doing it l'shma, but there is a way to do it. It's not always you're looking at somebody and you have an agenda that you don't like the guy anyway. There's certain people you like. The Shiloh does come up, and what was scary is this was still going on for 30 years. And the guy's taina was, you had no reason to do it, I would have stopped, and you don't like me, and you ruined me, and you roughed me up, and you didn't. I said, what happened? He said, I physically took him and sort of tossed him aside. Did you throw him too hard? He says, no, I threw him a safe enough distance that he would understand Laman Yishmu V'Yiro. Please don't try this at home, not with your siblings, not with other Bochurim. But it happened one late night, and all normal people, and boys will be boys, but the other guy wasn't Meichlim, so he was nice of him to go, and really he ended up writing a letter. It's a beautiful thing. And he asked Mechila for something that he probably wasn't Mechiv to do, but hopefully he made shalom, and sometimes you do that even, the time is it's not so honest. I really shouldn't be asking. I said you could be a little dishonest to make shalom. Not a kasha. Okay, if that comes up during the next man, please tell me about it 5 minutes before the shir. Next Pesach we'll revisit it, but it's I've seen in the younger grades, the Rabbi tell me that it gets a little rougher when they're out of recess, and I guess the older grades don't have recess. They just have a late night dorm matzav. Next. Okay, it's a general shaila, and it's an excellent one for hashkafa, and I sort of understand, I think I know the particular shaila, where he was coming from. This wasn't from here. Somebody spoke to me a few days ago about this. Is there a situation, is there a matzav where you think, after asking the shailas, and you had an opinion, you asked and you were right, there's nothing wrong with doing what you'd like to do? I'm not going to go into the specific case. He told me what it was, and taka wasn't usher. He wants to know, it's bothering him a little bit, it doesn't seem to be Ratzon Hashem. Interesting shaila. So what do you mean by that? He says, do I have to always look to see, is it Ratzon Hashem, besides it not being usher? No, the Chashuv B'nai Teir over here. Of course you do. Well, if it's not Asr, then why do you have to invent Yisurim? You never have to invent Yisurim. You have to use your Seichel to know that it's Pashut, that there might be a situation where it doesn't say Perish it's Asr because it didn't have to, because it's obvious, or it's not exactly Asr, but it's not a mitzvah, and in this situation it would be not Ratzon Hashem. There are a lot of things in that category, and it's often overlooked. You don't want to live your life as, what does it say, it's Asr? Because you don't have to invent chumas either, but you have to be growing and you have to figure out every point in life you could be doing a dvar rishus. What does Hashem want you to be doing? Does Hashem want you to be in this matzav? Hashem wants you to be over here, wants you to be with these people. Nothing wrong with being his friend. Maybe it's not good for your growth. This takes on so many different important decision-making processes in every matzav, even though you look to Shulchan Aruch, you ask the Shaila, and it doesn't say it's Aser, it doesn't say it's a Chiyuv. There exists this category, and this might be, for frum people, the biggest category. That's a Chiddush over here. If you haven't thought about this during Yom Naraim, for frum B'nai Torah, you're not looking to do Yisurim, you're looking to do mitzvahs. You basically know what's Aser, what's not, and when you don't, you ask. And there could be a serious chalik of your Avodas Hashem that you could be doing a lot better, and you're not, because you didn't see anywhere it's Asr, and you think you're checking the boxes of doing Chiyuvim. You won't go to Gehenna, and you'll get some chalik of Gan Eden deep in the bleachers, if there exist bleachers, but you understand what I'm saying. I said this over in Shul recently, people didn't know what I was talking about. I said bleachers is the top seating in the Siyam HaShas. Is that a good description? Otherwise, you're not going to know what the word means, right? You got it, right? The top, the less expensive seats. So no, you're in Olam Haba, you're in the stadium. Mahabdul. Nobody's going to be happy with that. We're here to figure out, Ratzon Hashem, don't run away with this, because you can't make up your own religion and your own mitzvahs. You know, if you just do the mitzvahs, wake up in the morning and Chiyuv Talmud Torah is 24/7, except when you have Peturim and when you got to relax and get some sleep. So there isn't a scenario every day if you're in yeshiva and you're gainfully learning, or you're gainfully employed and you're learning as much as you can. You shouldn't have this come up every day, but it comes up more than you think, and as a general Mahalach HaChaim, you can trick yourself into thinking that I'm not doing Yisurim, I'm trying to do mitzvahs, I even run after certain mitzvahs, and I'm doing what's on Hashem, and often that's true to a degree. What Yom Naram is all about, and you have to think of when you talk about the Kabbalahs and think about the Kabbalahs you made, and everybody keeps telling me they were told you're supposed to make tiny little Kabbalahs, and that's all true, but there's also a general Kabbalah, Mahalach HaChaim. That's not so tiny. And people hide behind whatever Gedolim stories they want to hide behind. I had people fighting me, telling me about a Kabbalah, and he started telling me of him, Gedolei Balei Musar, and it's all true. It just didn't apply to him. He said, no, I was going to take on something bigger, but I was told that they divided it in half and in quarters. You know all these mice. You take very tiny Kabbalahs, and his tiny Kabbalah at the end of the whole thing was he's going to have a bigger rugalach to be Yitzhak Chazon Shir for an Alamichya. That's after all his thinking and whittling it down. I said, I think you could do a little better than that, although that's very chashuv, you know, to get all the shirim, you don't want to make a bachal batala, but it can't be all about rugalach. So, you know, it's people hear what they want to hear, and we're talking about general Mahalach HaChaim, and it's all about trying to figure out what the Kosh Baruch Hu really want. So, there is plenty of gray area in between, and I just want to give an example which needs more hesber. And matter of fact, if you guys are here this Shabbos, problem is I'm not. But if you're here next Shabbos, is it an off Shabbos, the first Shabbos of the Zman? No, they're not going to let you out. Okay, so catch me later. But there's a very basic Shaila in Bereshis. Did Chava get a tzivu and not deep in the Eitz Hadas? The answer to that question is not so simple. Everybody thinks, yeah, of course. She got all the Anshim of Adam, Zeis HaPech affects her, and then she got an extra set of Anshim. So why? It's not Bit and Beis Elokim. Talks about it, and he says there were two different issues. She was a chayte and a machte. But he has to prove she was a chayte. If you look at the original tziva, it's given to Adam Rishon, it's not so posh she got that tziva. Why not? She didn't exist. The tziva was given before whatever pshat you're taking subis. She did exist, but she was attached. She didn't exist. Ubi Yerachima, he doesn't mention that, but it's part of that sugya. She didn't exist. So did she get a tzivui? The assumption is she did. There's even a medrash that Adam Rishon said, I ate, and he said, I'll eat more because that whole cheshbon and ruchni is better to take the Yitzhahara and get more schar. A lot of rate on that. But she said, as the medrash said, she said it also, which sounds like she admitted she had the Avera, and the Pashas and the Pasuk is, Akash Baruch Hu asked him, why'd you do it? He said, the Nachash made me do it. That means she was Maida more than B'mixas, that she had the Isser. It's unclear why, because Adam Rishon gave her over the Isser, would not make it to Rabban, and forget the part that he was Meisif. Avos Nosson says, if you're Meisif, you gotta let them know you're Meisif, because that's how the Nachash tricked her, that she didn't die when she touched it. Whichever Mahalach you take. So, if she was a Chayte, she was certainly a Machti. Right? She had the Avera, and she knew about the Avera, and she was Machti Adam Rishon. Let's say she wasn't Metzuva. Did she know Adam Rishon had an Isser? Avad. So she's at least a Machti. So let me ask you a simple question. Is there an Isser, Lifnei Iver? Since the Raisa, Pasich Lifnei Iver, L'sitei Michshol, is an Isser from a Yid to a guy? A lot of people think there isn't. Pashut there is. The example given is Avram and Achai. One of the classic examples in the Gemara. Is there an Isser Lifnei Iver for a guy to a guy? Pashut is not. There's no pasuk. Anything after Pashut Noach, the Goyim don't have an Isser. They have Zayin Mitzvahs. There's no Isser Lifnei Iver. So there's no Isser Lifnei Iver. There's no Isser Mesis. That's also a pasuk later on. So why is she getting punished for being a Machti if there's no Isser Lifnei Iver? Good question. What's the answer? There's no Isser. There is no pasuk. Some Achron, because of the strength of this kasha, want a taina that there must be goyim having this lifnei iver, even a guy to a guy, and it's say dinim lifnei iver, which others say to answer other kashas. There's a chelik of the avera, and then there's bad advice. Giving bad advice is only from yidden to yidden, and not a good idea to do to goyim either. But the official isser and goyim to goyim don't have the pasuk. But when you're machti somebody in an avera, you get a chelik of their avera that goyim have without a pasuk. Don't need a pasuk for it. What's the other answer? The other answer is there's no pasuk and there's no official isser. So why is Chava getting punished? The answer is she should have known it's not Ratzon Hashem. There's no pasuk? Doesn't have to be a pasuk. You have to know, I don't need a pasuk for that. If whether I have an isser, my husband has an isser, there's an isser to give him something that's Machalos Asiris. So it's pashut. Just an example from the parsha. There is a category that you have to figure out yourself that it's not Ratzon Hashem, and if you're not sure, you prove it, and it should be based on either an Isser you didn't know about or a hashkafa that is obvious that you didn't figure out yet. But there is such a category. Let me go to the one that was sent in right now, which needs a little bit of a hakdama, because, we'll go a few minutes over time when we get there. We started 5 minutes late. This is a common Shailos, and we'll start with, there are two of them. I don't know if we'll get to both. We'll start with the heavier one. You're all familiar, because you've been saying it for the last 40 days. The David is chosen for Elul because there are psukim in here, each one needs a few hours. Basic Yesed, all at Elam has this, but basic Yesed and B'tachan and Amunah and Avodas Hashem. So we're going to pick one, maybe two, to bring this out before we get to the Shailah. If I had to ask you, what's the most famous pasuk on the David? Probably the most famous pasuk at Elam. Baruch Hashem, they made a song out of it. What? Achashalti. You would say that even without the song, right? Stama. Achashalti meis Hashem meisa avakesh. David Melech says, I just have one, if I had to boil down to one request. Shivti veis Hashem kol yemei chai, Elas b'nai Hashem levaka be'echolam. So the immediate issue in this pasuk is Achashalti meis Hashem, is I only have one request, and David Melech goes on to ask two or three. So if you think, I noticed that, and that's not really true, and it's all one request, you could darshan that, possibly, but there's a medrash Read to the Lashon of the Medrash. It's on the pasuk Achashalti. Medrash Echatev. Amal HaKadosh Baruch Hu David. This is going to sound like a Taina David Melech. It's not. It's to bring out a point. Amal HaKadosh Baruch Hu David. B'tchilat ha'emer Achashalti Beis Hashem. And this one question was Shifti Beis Hashem. And then following that is Lasas B'nayim Hashem is a different bakash. You have to figure out what it is, but it's a different one. And Levaka Be'echel is the third one. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu says to David HaMelech, first you ask, only one ask, Achashalti Beis Hashem Isa Vakesh. And then you ask Lasas B'nayim Hashem Levaka Be'echel 2 and 3. So why'd you do that? Well, shtickle like Genevas Das. You only ask for one, and then you put in 3. Ready for the answer? David Melech has an answer. There's a reason he did it. Amal Lafami Ben Shalom. Lo Eved Shavel Rabbi. He says, I have a good Rabbi, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Talking to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And I learned it from you. No. Where did he learn it from HaKadosh Baruch Hu? Betchil Labasa Aleinu Elabachas. I'll read to you the pasuk. It's an Akev. Ati Yisrael. Politic Medrash. The point, the Shak of Ataya here. Ati Yisrael Ma Hashem Lakecha Shal Me'imach Kiyam Liyiras Hashem Lakecha. Moshe Rabbeinu is delivering a statement. It's not that difficult. Hashem only wants one thing. Yiras Shamayim. Liyiras Hashem Lakecha. You know the end of the pasuk? Pasuk doesn't end there. It's a Perek Yud Pasuk Yud Beis. Look it up afterwards. It starts off, Ati Yisrael, Ma Hashem Lakecha Shal Kim Liyers. Chazal, here, Darshan, the years, Milsa Zutrasa, year is not a small thing. Okay, so it said that. For Moshe Rabbeinu was, but Moshe Rabbeinu is Moshe Rabbeinu. It needs work on understanding even the ask about Yira, but Hashem said, ask one thing, Yira Shemaim. Yiras Hashem Lakecha, then it goes on, Lalechas B'chol D'Ruachav. Sounds like all the mitzvahs, and then it adds Ava. Ava sa lavid is Hashem Elokecha b'chol levavcha b'chol nafshecha. Doesn't end there. The next pasuk is Gimel Lishmer as mitzvahs Hashem eschul kesav asher nochi mitzav chayim l'tov loch. So it starts off. Hashem said, "I only have one request. Just have Yiras Shamayim," and then added was Avas Hashem and Kol Terakula Lishmer as mitzvahs Hashem ases los ases. So David HaMelech said, I would have thought that you can't do that either, but I learned from you. You start off with one, it's a medrash, and then you pile more on. So I figured if that works, we're in the receiving end of the tzivui, it's good for us. Says the Tovloch, he wasn't questioning that. Then if I'm davening, I can ask for things. I'll start off, I'm only asking for one thing, but then you can add on. What's the aside over here? The aside over here is, it's important when the Yetzer Hara, as soon as you get back for the Nuzman, starts trying to convince you out of learning as much as you want to, and being Nizar, and the Bar Machavero, and not getting into fights in the dorm, and all the other things we spoke about. Chavetz Chaim used to talk about this a lot. He said, the way to deal with this is not to talk to the Yetzer Hara and take it head on, and say, no, I made Kabbalahs, I just had Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, Sukkos, I have Yom Naraim, and I don't do any of these things, I'm a Mas Midotzum. To declare you're a Mas Midotzum for the next 5 months is not a good idea. It's a great idea, but it's not going to work as well. The aside that David HaMelech is teaching us, which you learn from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, is deal with one thing at a time, what's in front of you. Chavetz Chaim said, the blot in front of you, the taisus in front of you, the kasha in front of you, the teretz in front of you is the only thing that matters now. The Yetzer Hara is here from people, he's not going to tell you do an Avera. Maidani, good morning, do an Avera, it's not going to work. So he's going to try to overwhelm you and say, I can't, the sugi is too complicated, and I don't know why they learning Yevamis this year. It's not just Yevamis. It's any sugi if you learn it well. And I can't handle this, and it's overwhelming, and there are too many kashas and too many mahalchim in the Rishonim, and I didn't even understand what the first line here means, this Rabbi Ber, and it's not going to work. Chavetz Chaim used to repeat this all the time. You have one thing in front of you, peel it away, one taisus, one kasha, one teretz, 1 minute of shmir saloshan, or controlling your anger. So what do you do the next minute? When we get to the next minute, we're going to deal with it. So that works when HaKadosh Baruch Hu comes and asks us, I'm only asking for Yiras Shamayim. And once you're working your Shemayim, there's going to be an ask about Avos Hashem, which is a high madrega, and all the assays, all the list assays, but that's in increments. And when it comes to your own personal avodah, so you have to daven for Siyat Shema. So David HaMelech, there's Mart, he said, I have a tefillah. He had a lot of bakoshes. But he said tefillah, and he had a svaras. It works the same way. So I want to be in the Beis Hashem. Whether I am or not, I want to be there as much as possible. I'm speaking to an Olam. You're Zeicha now, this time of your life, to be in Beis Hashem your entire day and night. All the time. And Ben Hazmanim, you're in Shul all day, and you're Metzah Nefesh on Isru Chag, to learn in the morning and come to a shir. So you know this Yesod. David HaMelech says, the Yesod is be in the right place in a good environment. Problem is, the Yetzer Hara doesn't want you to be that much of a masmid, and he wants you to spend a little more time sleeping, a little more time in the dira, a little more time going back, and the hak, and some of it is needed to relax, and some of it is pretty caustic and causes damage. So David HaMelech starts off, my bakasha is, I shouldn't be overwhelmed. I want to be in the right place. I want to be shifti Beis Hashem Chol Yemei Chai. What do I want after that? Next step is going to be that I learn and I understand Avodas Hashem, but that Amkas Lachsas B'nayim Hashem, and I have sipik from it. Levaker Beicholo. How did you learn? You said this pasuk, I hope at least 80 times plus last month or so. What's Levaker Beicholo? He asked to be there the whole time. Bikur means you're visiting. The Bikur, that's a stira. So Rashi addresses that. I'm sure you all asked yourself this kasha as you were saying this slowly. If you didn't, you can say it now. It's not Baltaisif. And remember it for next El. Rashi brings down two mahalchim, two very different mahalchim. What levaker is a problem. So first shot is, I want to be there every morning fresh and early. I can't spend 24 hours in the Beis Medrash, 24 hours in the Beis Hamikdash. Levaker as in biker. That's the first shot. The second shot is, Lo Yevaker Bein Tov Lara. What does that mean? Anybody remember that pasuk? Last time you're on a farm, you have Meiser Behema. So you take out the animals one at a time. We described this in davening. They go by, everybody gets down. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. You have your red stick. The 10th cattle comes out. That's Meiser. That might be the shvachest animal. And the guy's a good guy. He says, I'm going to bring that as a korban. So you have to have me to switching it. The Tamur is about this. You want to upgrade. Sometimes you want to downgrade. You can't switch. This is the 10th as a Leivaka Ben Tei Lara. Leivaka means don't start making an inquiry which one's better, which one's worse. So Leivaka Be'echala means I should not only be zeicha to sit in the Beis Medrash, I should think about what I'm doing and analyze the sugya and analyze my motives, analyze my Avodas Hashem, my Yir Shemayim, be honest, where can I grow? Leivaka means as in Leivaka Ben Tei Lara. That's the second shot. They're not a stira to each other. Rashi brings down from two earlier Rishonim. Amazing. We can go. Amazing. You can go your whole life and sing this song and say this pasuk. Levaka bechol is a stira. That's what Rashi's trying to answer. Our avodah is to keep in mind the aside that we're doing it in increments, and you're not mechuyev for the next kasha, or for the next blot, or for the next day, for the next hour. The Yetzer Hara wants you to feel everything on your shoulder when you're down, so that you get completely discombobulated and you're babahala, and you figure, I can't do all this. And as soon as you feel like that, that thing pops into the head of most people and most B'nai Torah 10 times a day. Just you got to know how to push back. So the answer is, don't even address it. It's not Nageya. You want to know, what am I going to do when I get to the second terrace of Tesis? You were told by somebody already who heard Shir in the last Machzor that you're never going to get out of that terrace. We're going to be in it for 3 months. I'm in the first terrace now. Don't worry about it when we get there. Any static interference is all from the Yetzer Hara. It sounds very firm. I'm worried. I want to get the whole mahalach in the sugya. You do, and maybe you will, maybe you won't. It's one at a time. And when you're trying to be zayir, not to get involved in the hak that you hear at 11:30 at night, some of it's kosher hak. You'll say that's a stira in terms. Okay. I hope it's kosher. You walk in and you hear something, you say, I don't know, I don't like where this is going. So what, I'm going to stay out of the room, and I want my friends, and I got to go to sleep, and I got to hang around. So I'm going to say, this could take a half hour. I use all my examples from real Shailos and real Bochurim, in case you haven't noticed. So I'm going to stay away for a half hour. So what's the answer? So Mel says, no, don't talk about a half hour. Maybe just stay out for 5 minutes. What's going to be, I'll catch up as in I walk in 5 minutes, then I'm going to be up to speed on all the hak from the, it says Gedalia Torah in the dorm. And they'll let me know what's going on. First of all, you save yourself 5 minutes. It could have been caustic. I'm not saying all the conversations in the dorm are bad. Hopefully most of them are good. But you save yourself 5 minutes, and after 5 minutes, you know what? That 5 minutes wasn't that hard. Maybe I'll go back to the best measure. It's not going to take 20 minutes, and I'll miss the whole thing. But you got to break it down to increments, because we're not set up for nisyanis that we can't handle. And nisayan that's 5 minutes down the line, a day down the line, is not negaya yet. That's the yesod. Speaking of hak, so we're just going to introduce this point. Maybe it's good we're going to run out of time in the next 6 minutes. So the Shailos that came in as I'm driving, printed it out right before I got in the car, and I'm trying to look at it in the car. And the question is, it seems the excitement of at least the hostages is higher in certain areas. And I didn't yet discuss it much, and it's not being discussed. I'd like to know where you live, but I understand what he's asking. So Shaila is, what's the das Torah over here, and how to approach it? And it's a very complex kasha, but it's very simplistic also. If a yid is Nebuch held in captivity, and now he's alive, or not alive, Nebuch, and he gets Kevili Yisrael, that's a cause for simcha, and that's gavaldik. If a war ended and there are people in harm's way, that's also gavaldik. That has nothing to do with politics, nothing to do with hashkafas hachayim. That's the good news. Whether or not, we were saying to him in the Shul, we also had a seder that people should be safe. I said, extended at least one more week. They're having a summit now somewhere in Mitzrayim. You're allowed to go back if you have a meeting with somebody. Otherwise, you can't move there. Since the Reis, and there are a couple of Yidden involved. Matter of fact, the people running it are Yidden. And they're trying to do their best, we hope. And no reason to assume not so. And they're saving lives. Of course, now we have a matzav where everybody, one wouldn't imagine 3 years ago, I'm not saying it's good or bad. Hashem is running the world and always is and always will be. Our job is to learn and daven and not be too involved in this, but it is important to know it. Al-pi, at least a simple mahalach and das Torah, even it's a very complex sugya. Our view is that the Yid is a Tank Shenishba who might be in the army and was captured and was there. Even the guy, somebody asked me, should we davening for the guy to he should get back? I said, yeah, it's a sugya in Gittin. Makavrin Goyim in Yisrael and his ass like this doesn't mean the same base kfaros. It means you're still to what the matzav is. It shouldn't be a chil Hashem. So it's definitely good news they got back. Definitely good news that there's no active fighting. Could it be we're still in Gullus and a lot of problems that came up again because the war has used the Kardam Achbar, like drafting Yeshiva Bochurim, which is the worst thing they could do, just off the danger. And that's an old agenda, and that's very worrisome, and that's not going away, and it got worse. And they're kanassing the people, and they're throwing them in jail, and they're taking away whatever money they had for pita and chumas. Now they only have money for pita. There are a lot of problems. We're still in Gullus, and we have to be aware of that. But we have to do what we're doing to help out the effort, and that is the steiging. Lamaisa, even what they're talking about now, as we sit here, is that now everybody's masking. We should have a two-state solution. If you're not aware of that, then stay in your vomit, don't worry about it. But 2 states, the problem, or the perceived possible problem, was that the one's in Gaza and one's over here, and Nebuch, they're Yidden living in between. So what was fought against for a while, I'm not saying wrongfully so, they're 2 sides of the story, all of a sudden now, so that's the starting point. That might be, Rahman Islam, more dangerous than it was to begin with. Lamaisa, we just spoke about breaking down things and taking one day at a time. It's a very complicated world, and it's a very dangerous matzav, and that is Gullus conditions. And Yeshiva Bochurim and people here in America should be davening, learning, and sending a lot of money to be machzik Torah. That's our job. And yes, it looks like it could be more toxic than what they're trying to do now, which is why it's not a bad idea to keep saying Tehillim for a while. Lamaisa, the question was, how do we view this? And we don't want to make it into a separate religion, that it's all about the politics and all about the hostages should be home. They are home. Whoever made it through, again, that's a cause for simcha. To get too much in the politics and the hawk loses sight of the fact that the people doing this know they don't have a solution either. And there's no solution in Gullus conditions. And what they're putting on the table now, which Rabbi is cheering about, on paper is worse, just from a strategic point of view. The answer is, if we were focused just on strategy and how is this going to work, we wouldn't be here as Klal Yisrael. We're here because Einu Mazu Ella B'Shvil HaTorah, with the Torah and with our steiging, and that's the biggest difference we can make. And in the 2 minutes we have left, or we don't have left, I'll leave you with a Shaila. And it's important to think about. I might even suggest in one line where the terrace might be. Did you notice that the Chumash ends? You have to pick something to sign off. So the few psukim toward the end, Lokam Kamesha Oid, the biggest Navis, the Neitz and Atayra, and all the Isis and Meisim. We see the last two psukim, because the last part is surprising. Lokam Navi Ebi Yisrael Kamesha Sheyada Hashem Panim Apanim. Chol Isis and Meisim Asher Shlocha Hashem Lasses Beretz Yisrael Leparo. And that is how we think the Torah should end. Recount the Tzitz Yisrael, the Nisim, the flows, what made Klal Yisrael, the Nisim of Torah, the process of Kabbalah Torah, Moshe Rabbeinu. No. So what does it end with? The last pasuk Yud Beis that ends Chamisha Chumsha Torah. This has got to be a tremendous insight in Yiddishkeit, because we're ending Chumash like this. We're ending with it, and it can get lost. And you all saw the Rashi. What is it teaching us? L'chol hayad hachazaka, l'chol hameir hagadol, she'asa Moshe la'enei kol Yisrael. So the first part of Rashi, l'chol hayad hachazaka, she'kibul es haTorah b'luchos b'yadav. Chol hameir hagadol nisim gvuris she'midbar hagadol aner. One long Yetzias Yisrael. That's what Sukkah is all about. Nisim, 40 years. So far it's expected. La'enei kol Yisrael is the big chiddush. She'nesar liba lishbar luchos la'neim. The last thing in Chumash, the last Chazal, the last Rashi, is that Moshe Rabbeinu broke the luchos and brings from the Chazal, Gemara, Hiskima Dasakash Baruch Hu, Ladaita, Gemara and Pei Zayin, and Shabbos, Shenema, Asher Shibarta, Yishakecha, Asher Shibarta. Why is Chumash and Rashi ending off with this Hara Shah that's one off, never done again? That Moshe Rabbeinu Nebuch saw that he had to break the luchos, which is normally in Issa Deraisa, the luchos. And the Gemara says Moshe Rabbeinu did three things. The other two were also good. This one he got a Yeshakayach for. Okay, but why is that the last thing we're leaving with in Chumash? This is the lesson to remember Shvius Alichus. The good kasha. I'm sure you just finished being married Sedra. It's a pella. This is what are we leaving with? Before Bereshis Bara, what's the answer? So Futner Bekitzer, this needs to be treated more to remind me Pesach. Futner, the Maimer says, I didn't find the Maimer in print, my Shver told me he was there. So Futner says that the aside over here is that Torah and our Messiah can't be watered down, and if they're dancing around an egel, whatever excuse they had, Moshe Rabbeinu understood, I have to break the luchos because they're just going to water it down and think of excuses why this is not a Avodah Zarah, and we're communicating, we're nervous. If we're going to water it down, there's no chance. So, Yisod number one, we're leaving Chamisha Torah. We're here to uphold the entire Messiah, every Kutzah Shayud. It can't be watered down, we don't compromise. The second part, which is not a stira to what we just quoted from Hudner, Zatzal, is that Moshe Rabbeinu also did it in defense of Klal Yisrael. Famous Medrash that he wanted to rip up the Ksuba because it would be a bigger Kitrug. They just had a Kedushin and now they're already being Mizana. It's terrible. So he rips up the Ksubas. He breaks the Luchas. That was Moshe Rabbeinu's Gevura, that on the one hand, if they're not worthy and they're not capable of keeping the Messiah, don't give it over. On the other hand, you have to have Rachmanas on Yidden who don't know Ben Yaminim Besmolim, and you need to milchazik them and you need to davar them so they can get there for a second Luchas. It's the same message. I'll break the Luchas now, but then I'll go back with Mesiras Nefesh for 40 days and fast again, and help you do tshuva and beg for Rachamim, and it's going to take till Yom Kippur, till Salachti Kedvarecha. I'm going to do it because there's a Pintal Yid. So the only thing we have to take out of the matzav right now is there are a lot of people still with some Pintal Yid. You see, a lot of the people in this matzav the last 2 years did tshuva, Pella. And they were, at the beginning of it, a festival that wasn't, let's say, Yeshiva Shamatzav, let's put it that way. Now, would that be a good description? Nebuch. Numbers don't know Ben Yamin and Bismol. But the Pintaliyid there, and some already recognized it, and some didn't. Our job is to daven and help them, but not at the expense of any kutzah shel yud of our Messiah. There's a lot more to be said on that, but we're out of time. There are USBs on Bereshis available over here. You can help yourself. It's on the entire Bereshis. Took 7 years. You can listen to it probably in less. Hatzlacha.